Добрый день! Рада приветствовать вас в студии Classroom Московской школы управления Сколково на презентации нашей новой программы «Готовность к лидеров к будущему». Важный технический момент. Наши гости будут сегодня выступать на английском языке, поэтому с нами работает синхронный переводчик Николай. Если вам нужно воспользоваться переводом, нажмите в панели управления на значок «Глобус» и выберите требуемый для вас язык. Пожалуйста, не отключайте оригинальный звук. Наши гости сегодня доктор Selina Neri, в Zoom с нами сегодня доктор Marius Oosthuizen и я, Юлия Карпенко. Что ждет нас с вами в ближайшие 1,5 часа, которые мы проведем вместе? Во-первых, я призываю вас всех включить видеокамеры, чтобы мы вас видели, чтобы мы знали, кто сегодня с нами. Вот, спасибо большое. Мы начинаем вас видеть, понимаем, что мы здесь сегодня не одни с Мариусом, Selиной. Итак, для начала мы познакомимся, расскажем о Selине, о докторе Мариусе. После этого они расскажут вам все, что знают о программе, о концепции «Готовность к будущему». И у нас еще в конце останется 20 минут на то, чтобы вы задали вопросы Selине и Мариусу. Итак, начнем с представлений. Меня зовут Юлия Карпенко. Я директор открытых программ школы управления Сколково. В августе будет 10 лет уже, как я здесь работаю, но всю свою профессиональную деятельность я посвятила бизнес-образованию. Моя специализация – это создание образовательных программ на тему лидерства, коучинга, женского лидерства и многих других тематик. Начинала я свою карьеру в автопроме, после этого перешла в финансовый сектор, и вот 10 лет назад я присоединилась к школе управления Сколково. Помимо этого я являюсь экзекутив-коучем, работаю с топ-менеджерами, собственниками бизнесов и предпринимателями. Ну и, конечно же, я училась, являюсь выпускницей школы Сколково, выпустила себя с программы экзекутив-коучинг и культурный код. И в последнее время я увлеклась тематикой наследия, преемственности. Вот сегодня мы вспоминали с Selиной, что год назад в Сколково мы вместе с ней проводили сессию, посвященную теме преемственности и наследия. Несколько слов о программе, которую мы хотим вам сегодня представить. «Готовность к лидерам» — это наша новая международная флагманская программа, которая состоится в апреле этого года. Программа будет длиться 4 дня и пройдет здесь, на нашем кампусе. Адресована программа аудитории топ-менеджеров, руководителей команд, тех лидеров, которые сейчас находятся в транзитном переходе, ну и также для тех, кто является собственниками бизнесов и предпринимателями. И в чем же, на мой взгляд, состоит уникальность программы «Готовность к будущему»? Она затрагивает 2 уровня. С одной стороны, рассматриваются вопросы готовности к будущему на уровне организации, а с другой, и то, что, на мой взгляд, является очень важным и актуальным, она рассматривает эти вопросы на индивидуальном уровне. И основная цель программы – это и вообще концепция Future Readiness, готовность к будущему, состоит в том, чтобы помочь участникам научиться превращать вот окружающую нас неопределенность в желаемые сценарии будущего. При этом такие сценарии, которые наполнены глубоким внутренним смыслом. Несколько слов о партнере, об Академии Future Readiness, с которой вместе мы создаем и запускаем нашу новую программу. Хочется сказать, что сегодня лидеру стоит сместить фокус с процессов на человека. И, соответственно, гибкость, психологическая устойчивость и способность принимать осознанные решения являются ключевыми компетенциями. И вот именно поэтому концепция Академии Future Readiness настолько для нас ценна и привлекла наше внимание некоторое время назад, когда мы познакомились с Selиной, и она нам представила эту концепцию. Ведь то, что будет происходить в аудитории, то, чему свою работу посвящают доктор Selina, доктор Marius, это помочь участникам и тем, кто учится в их академии, найти ту самую внутреннюю опору, которая поможет им и выстраивать доверие в команде, а также управлять энергии команды, ради которой мы, по идее, и работаем в наших организациях. Сейчас, Селина, позвольте представить вас. Доктор Селина Нери. У нее очень интересная личная и профессиональная история. Хочется сказать, что Selina долгое время работала в крупных компаниях на позициях топ-менеджера. Она работала в стартапах, работала не только в разных странах, но и на разных континентах. И в середине пути Selina решила изменить свою траекторию развития, получила научную степень PhD, заняла пост ректора школы бизнеса HALT, который находится в Дубае. А на сегодняшний день Selina является ректором и сооснователем Академии Future Readiness. Помимо этого, у Selina есть две очень важных... Selina входит в два важных рейтинга. Во-первых, это рейтинг Thinkers 50 и рейтинг Financial Times, который называется 100 Women to Watch. Насколько я понимаю, Selina — это особенная женская премия. И также с нами сегодня в Зуме доктор Marius Oosthuizen. И попрошу вывести слайд про... я сама его могу вывести. Слайд про Мариуса на экран. Мариус является мировым футурологом, ученым, консультантом, фасилитатором, который специализируется на форсайтах, на сессиях, посвященных стратегическому и сценарному планированию и также интегративному лидерству. Сам Мариус живет и преподает в Южной Африке, в городе Йоханнесбург, в одной из ведущих бизнес-школ мира, которая называется ГИПС. Мариус, спасибо большое, что вы подключились к нам из такой далекой точки мира. А теперь я рада передать слово доктору Selina. Selina, передаю вам кликер и слушаем вас рассказ о программе.
Спасибо. Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here with all of you. I will be creating the container, the context, the framework within which this program sits. The approach that we have selected for this program is absolutely very well suited to what you already know about Skolkovo. We are in the business of experiential learning. This is a program for professionals. This is a program for people who already are very active in their careers and in their business. But let's go a couple of steps back to understand where the field of future readiness is coming from. You are probably very familiar with the expression, the future of work. This is something that across many countries for a few years has been spoken about. We see it in the media, in podcasts, in symposiums, in forums. If you listen to some of the tech executives of the industries, the future of work is all about the effect that AI, artificial intelligence, will have on primarily employment. We hear about jobs being eliminated, we hear about skills becoming obsolete, and this is one side of the coin. Then on the other side of the camp, there are organizations and very famous business people and also politicians very excited about the future, portraying a picture where we will live better, we will be able to work and elevate and augment our capacity to produce value, to create value for ourselves and our organizations. So where is the reality? Where do we stand today in terms of this future of work? Because the current narrative, the current dialogue around the future of work has created a problem. The problem is the following. Because there is so much attention to AI and to skills as a primary focus, organizations are spending money to upskill and reskill their workforce. And even all of us professionals are at times investing our own money to own our skills, to make sure we stay relevant and our teams stay relevant with us. There is a problem with this picture that we are living at the moment because unfortunately skills alone will not be enough not to make us employable or keep us employed, but to ensure that we are able to thrive. And thriving is a key concept of future readiness. If we want ourselves, our teams, and our companies to thrive, we need to go beyond the obsession of the future of work, AI, and skills, and really understand a little bit better how the system of work is changing due to a number of forces that are playing. So we are moving away from this dialogue that is at the opposite, has two poles. One is unemployment because AI will do everything we can do as human beings, and the other side is excitement. And we are going to go beyond skills, which is only one important element, but only one, of the bigger picture of why there is a field called future readiness today. So how is the system of work changing? When I talk about the system of work, I like to always bring a metaphor into our imagination. Take a cake with the icing on top. The cake is the system of work, meaning the combination of jobs, roles, tasks, skills, and the relationship inside and around organizations. The icing on top is where at the moment we are placing attention. The icing is the effect, the impact of AI, as well as what AI will do to our skills. So we need to go beyond scratching the surface, the icing on the cake, to really understand and embrace this new world of work, which, by the way, is already existing today. It's not future, we are already in it. So first of all, there is the force of technology. I think we are familiar with this. We understand the type of magnitude that particularly, but not only, artificial intelligence brings into our professional lives. We are moving away from just using chatbots into agentic AI and over time, even general artificial intelligence. So this is an area we seem to be very familiar with. There's a second force that we don't talk a lot about, but it's very, very important to understand the world of work as it is changing. That is longevity. From biosciences, we know that we are going to live longer and better. We are predicted to stay engaged with work well into our 70s, 80s, and even for some people, 90s, with a bit of self-discipline that grace from above. We will not stay in the same type of roles. We will change the way we work, and we can choose to stay engaged in portfolio type of work that is a combination of many things. Now, longevity also means that at any point in time in our companies, whether a small company or a large state-owned or publicly listed company, we are at the moment having 6 generations working together, and all of us know the joy and the sorrows of multi-generational working together. But in the future, we will actually go into 7 generations. There are certain characteristics that certainly are specific to different generations. I always say I am a Gen X. I was born in 1968. But I share with the younger generations, with millennials and with Gen X, and even with Generation Alpha, who are the kids of today, certain values, certain ways of looking at life, a certain appetite for learning all the time. So in future readiness, the year we were born in is not very important. What is more important is that we embrace a mindset and a learned behavior that is very much the one of future readiness, meaning that we learn how to thrive in this new world of work, and we engineer the people around us and we inspire them to thrive so that we can propel ourselves and our companies and our even nations forward. The third, before I come to the third, something very important that longevity is already doing to us is the following. We are all familiar with the system of life where we are born, we get some form of education, depending on also which countries we live in and which access to education, what type of access we have. Then we go into our careers, and then eventually we retire. This is very linear, has been with us as a system for hundreds of years, not only a few years, but this system is being disrupted. So we are more and more living in a life that is called multi-stage. So regardless of how many years, my age, how old I am or how young I am, we are living in loops. And loops are moments in time, can be a week, a year, a couple of months, where I am living my life, I am working, I'm creating value in whatever profession I choose, but I'm also all the time learning. And whether I am 5 years old or 105, I am going through different loops. So this paints the picture of something I am sure you have all heard about called lifelong learning. So the idea that we never stop learning, and especially because of the forces of technology, longevity, and the one I will present in a moment, learning is the bloodline of our ability to thrive in the new world of work. What happens between the loops? How do I go from one loop to the other? By transitioning. And transitioning skills is something that is very relevant to future readiness. Transitioning doesn't mean necessarily I leave one company or I leave one industry or I leave one function. We will see in a moment that transitioning can also mean horizontal changes, changes from full-time employment to portfolio type of employment, mentoring people next to being very active at work. So transitioning are becoming, and I personally welcome this, very normal, more accepted, and we are becoming clever, we are better at managing those transitions. As Julia was mentioning at the beginning, I transitioned already four industries and multiple functions. And at the time, they were very difficult, these transitions, because the system of work was very rigid. But we are beginning to see more fluidity that allows transitions and therefore career development to become easier. The next important force that we don't talk about and is mapping a different way of working and a system of work is the quest for purpose. Not only Gen Z, not only younger students or professionals are asking themselves the why of my life. Why am I here? Why am I alive? What is the purpose of my life? But across all generations, we are asking ourselves this question. And this is important because it means we are no longer willing to do work or work with people and with organizations where we do not feel the connection between our value system and the type of work we do, or the type of people we do it with, or the type of purpose that an organization or even at government level and country level we stand for. There's something called the Great Resignation, and the Great Resignation is a phenomenon across many countries in the world where people of all ages are leaving good jobs, well-paid jobs, because they are tired, they're fed up with the lack of alignment on purpose. So if I want to attract, retain the right people for my business, but also for myself, if I want to thrive and live a full life, purpose is an important element to keep in mind. So how is this system of work changing? How are these ingredients of the cake inside the cake changing? We have defined for a long time people, all of us, in terms of my job. Let's imagine I am the chief financial officer of a company. My role, I manage the financial affairs of the business. And my tasks, the many, many activities I do every day, from checking bank account balances that maybe my team will do for me, all the way to engineering the finances of an acquisition or an expansion or a new market entry abroad. This is a man-made, so a human-made definition of a person, a role, a job. And this is going to profoundly change. Let me give you a quick example of how. This is a picture of a lithium mine in Chile. Lithium is a very important commodity in the world we live in, because our phones, our electric cars, there are many things that in our life that are powered by lithium. Let's imagine there is a crisis. So let's focus on the left-hand side of this situation. So one day, there is a spike in pricing of lithium. We are working in a factory, a battery factory. We need lithium for our production. So I have a spike, increase in price. And at the same time, my competitor is having a problem in their factory. So they are unable to generate their production, their batteries, because they're suffering from the fact that the factory is not working. Technically, there is a problem. So what would happen in this scenario without AI? So in the just normal way of life, first of all, the sales team would start receiving lots of queries from customers asking for quotations because they can't buy the lithium from that particular competitor. They're coming to me. So sales begins to fiddle around with the queries and ask finance, can you approve this? Can you approve that? Sometimes price increase, sometimes let's give a discount. Finance will say, ooh, wait a moment. I need to look at the numbers. I can't come back to you immediately. Then we go into the operations side of things. And in our factory in operations, the team is uncertain which orders to prioritize. Am I going to ship out the orders of my clients who have the old pricing, or am I going to prioritize the orders that the sales team is just bringing in because there's a spike in price, we are selling at a higher margin, we're going to make more money. So there is this dialogue going on. And then, of course, the marketing team is saying, ooh, wait a second. We cannot be perceived in the market to take advantage of a crisis of lithium, because in many countries there is even regulation prohibiting this. So the marketing team is concerned about how are we perceived in the market and what's the reputational damage that this crisis could give to us. All of this takes a few days. Now let's look on the right-hand side. We bring in agentic AI, which simply is a piece of software, highly sophisticated, that is trained and is being given instructions to operate across silos, because this is the beauty of agentic AI. So as soon as there is the price increase in the market, my agentic AI system in my organization will scan the market and will pick up the signal that there is a spike in pricing. And because I was smart and I plugged my agentic AI in the global trading system for lithium, which is a key raw material, so to speak, for my business, I'm also being able, through the system, to pick up the fact that my competitor is having a problem in the factory. In milliseconds, agentic AI will start looking at a dynamic pricing that I can offer to not only my customers, but the customers that are coming to me because my competitor is in trouble. And this dynamic pricing is set in terms of parameters, has been set into the system by the finance team and the executives of the company. In parallel, the same agentic AI system is going to optimize the production line and make decisions in terms of which orders do go first, do we deliver first, do we prioritize, based on the instructions that I gave, which, for instance, could be, I only want to support, number one, our existing customers, and if when those are fulfilled, the others. In parallel, the marketing team is going to start scanning the market through agentic AI and verifying whether there's any problem for us in increasing pricing to make the most financial outcome, right, out of this situation without losing reputation. And last but not least, the agentic system in the same milliseconds will calibrate the incentives of the sales teams, because now we want them focused not on volume only, because otherwise when the crisis is over, all these customers will go, but on contract duration as well, because we want to use the crisis as an opportunity to win over and keep with us more customers. In this scenario, the fact that I am using agentic AI is, number one, not interested in the silos, because agentic AI is serving us in decision making across these functions. Number two, we humans in the company, we are orchestrating this millisecond reaction of the agentic AI system, because guess what? The rules of the game that agentic AI is using, we set them. And we can manipulate them in real time. And we have given the system a certain delegation of authority to act according to certain parameters and guardrails that we set and that we can reset. The crisis is over. We have used the situation to our advantage, and then the situation goes back to normal for a certain period of time. So this example shows that the profound impact of technology into the way we are organized today, into our job roles that are irrelevant during the sort of description that I mentioned, and the fact that our intelligence gets augmented because we are on top of AI, verifying that the system is working according to the instructions we have, and we are calibrating and providing oversight into the system. Now, let's look into what does it mean to thrive in this new system of work, because thriving is a very important concept. And the foundation of future readiness, which is a new field, a field that is being championed now for a few years, but new in terms of it's not 100 years old, is that if we discover, if we explore, develop and deploy what makes ourselves, our teams, and our organizations thrive by using the Future Readiness Framework, our capacity to propel ourselves and the organization forward will increase exponentially. Propelling forward will take the form of whatever KPIs we set for ourselves, whatever strategic realignment, new business model, new market, saving money, higher productivity, higher, faster pace to market, etc. But this is fundamentally the foundation of future readiness. So let's look at what do we have to be able to understand whether we are thriving or not. First of all, thriving, very briefly, is the combination of three things. We thrive at work when we experience vitality, we feel energized, we feel top of our game, we feel good in our skin, we are in the right place, etc. The second one is learning. We are learning all the time, whether in formal learning or informal learning. And the third one, very important to all of us, we are performing. So these three things go together. Now, nobody is thriving every day, all the time, lifelong. But the direction that we set for ourselves and our teams needs to be thriving if I want to propel forward my business and our own professional lives. So the Future Readiness Framework is the result of many years of research. It is also something that is included in the book that together with Skolkovo I am writing, which will be available at the end of this year in the Russian market with our publisher MIF. And it is the playbook, this framework is the playbook of how do we hone, how do we develop and stay on the course of future readiness. So first of all, we have competencies. We are all familiar with these skills and behavior that change over time and take on different shapes and form in industries or different types of companies. The second one is experiences. Surprise, surprise, non-work experiences. So it turns out that if I want to develop in myself and in my people lateral thinking, the ability to see the periphery, to see around a problem from different angles and see around the corner, it is actually a good practice that we have some form of life outside of work, because what we learn from sports, traveling the world, playing music, whatever we do, is coming back into value for business by developing our lateral thinking. The third one is drivers, very important. So what is it that I am interested in, and what is it that I believe in? Not only myself and my team and my company, but also I was speaking on Friday at the Open Forum of the National Center Russia, and we heard from Mr. Oreshkin of your government the importance of values at national level, because these are also the cultures that have formed us, right? So drivers are important, and I need to explore them, assess them, and constantly understand what they are in myself and in my people if I want to engineer this machine, behavioral machine of future readiness. The next one is influence. Now, actually, there's a spelling there. It's preferences, not influence. Apologies for this. Preferences are important because each of us is energized to act in a different way. And there is something called making an impact at work that has become very important in leadership development, in business management. And we now have a methodology that can explore and assess how we make an impact. Each of us, being capable of doing something is different than the type of impact we have, because impact is what we can produce when we operate at our best. When we don't even think about it, this is how we are naturally energized to make an impact in a team. And there are different types of impacts, and in a transformative team, in a team that drives value, we need the combination of different types of impact. So that's preferences. The next one is influence. Influence is fundamentally important in future readiness. Why? Because we are looking for systemic change. Systemic change can be my own system, Selina, my system, my team system, my company system, or eventually even my country level system. Now, influence in some parts of the world has a bit of a negative taste. Oh, someone is under the influence of someone else. But in future readiness, influence takes the form of the ability, our ability, to positively influence the thoughts, the decisions, and the actions of others. The more we use AI, particularly agentic AI, the more I need to be able to influence the people around me to make use of AI, make sense of AI, be not complacent with AI, meaning we need to keep on questioning what the system is telling us to do or not to do. And of course, to be able to have an effect, an impact on the business that is tangible, that is in terms of behaviors, but also financial results. And the last enabler of future readiness is potential. Not only having performed very well in the past years, which is at the moment how worldwide we define potential, and then we put people in a high potential bucket, but more my ability and willingness to adapt to bigger problem, more complex problem, more complicated things to do, and problems to solve. Now, you will see across the framework the word foresight. And the word foresight is not only a word that Dr. Marius will introduce in a moment, but it is one of the cornerstone competencies and behaviors of future readiness. And it is a competence in the first enabler. It is a driver of our behavior as humans. It is also a way of influencing others by being able to forge a variety of forward-looking views that we then adapt to the business and adopt in business. And it is also a very important piece of the human potential. So this program not only introduces us to the world of future readiness, but we also zoom in from the very first day one of the program on the building foresight as a new leadership competence that is very useful, not only to look at the future, but also to solve today's problem in the crazy world we have around us, and also develop it as an organizational competence. Now, very briefly, the enabler of future readiness called potential has 5 dimensions. And the reason why this is important is that research is very clear in telling us that most high potential programs where a group of people are selected as the new bosses, the new leaders of a company, very often these programs fail miserably. They do not give the results that we expect. Why? Because we have been used to define potential only or primarily in terms of my performance over the past few years. So Selina has performed very well last year, last 3 years, we put her in the high potential. But guess what? In a new role, I might be in a different organizational setup. The boss has changed, my team has changed, the problems I'm dealing with are bigger and more complex. I might even be in another country, maybe no longer the headquarters in Moscow, I'm in a subsidiary somewhere else. And all of a sudden, we see across the world that these high performers have struggled performing. So in future readiness, we have 5 dimensions of potential that are very important to bet on the development, not only on the right people, but the people that are at the right level of maturity for a big step. Number 1, motivation, not only my interest in making more money or becoming more senior or going abroad, but my real unselfish interest in taking over more responsibility to lead my people and my organization towards results. The next one is inquisitiveness. Curiosity is a driver of future readiness, my interest in wanting to know more, and I'm certainly a curious woman. Inquisitiveness is the quality and the skills of and the habit of asking the right questions, because in a world where information is available all over around us, and at times even for free, it's no longer having the right answers that defines effective leaders. We need to be able to formulate the right questions, even more important. The next one is insight. Have you ever felt that there was a moment, either because you were here at Skolkovo, or you were in a meeting, or you were with a client, you were in the market, and all of a sudden, you say, now I understand, something clicks. You see the connection between things. You find this is a solution to the problem we have been struggling with. So insight is a muscle that we can develop. And foresight is a big, big force to develop this muscle and this behavior. And the last 2 are engagement. Engagement is a very important piece of future readiness and a dimension of potential. Very simply, the extent to which I bring to my work every day my intellectual energy, my emotional energy, and my physical energy. Now, nobody is highly engaged or low engaged all the time. We are humans, we fluctuate, but we need to understand the direction of engagement needs to be the right one. And engagement is a big problem worldwide. We are stuck at 21% employee engagement across 200 plus countries for the last 51 years. So there's work we need to do. And the last, before I hand over the stage to my colleague, is a very important piece of developing future readiness, which we call regenerative resilience. Now, you're probably very familiar with resilience. It's the big word of our century. Push more, do more, deliver more projects, more pressure on us when we work. And then as a result, we hit a wall and many people go in burnout, which is another big problem of today's world. But look at the world of sports, whatever sports you like. Athletes, elite athletes, the ones that are really successful, they make it to the Olympics, and Russia has a huge history in this, are successful, they perform, they win, because in their discipline recovery is embedded as a part of being high performing. But in business, if I go to my boss and I ask, I need to recover, give me some recovery time, I might get a couple of days off because I'm tired, but we don't have recovery as a cultural part of business. We need to learn it from the world of sports, and to be able to sustain resilience in a way that is regenerative, I need to be able not only to train the muscle of determination, perseverance, and grit, but also build recovery in my system of work, which does not mean sending people off for the weekend, or I give you a day off or two when the team has done an amazing job. That is important and we love it, but it's a short-term solution. What we need to really tackle, and this is a big part of future readiness and foresight, is how do I build the system of work in a way that, for instance, the strain of work, the pressure of work is well distributed across teams. Not a few teams are always the ones, fighting the fights, and others can coast along the way. And how do I keep monitoring my team and my own resilience so that I can see the signals of when a team can relax and needs recovery versus when they can keep on pushing. So as you can see, foresight is a motivator in potential, is an indicator of inquisitiveness, is an indicator of insight, and is a dimension of engagement and regenerative resilience. So let's discover in depth from the expert in foresight what foresight is, what it means to our business, and why this program came to life. Dr. Marius, to you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Selina, and lovely to be connecting with you all the way in Moscow, and welcome to all the colleagues at Skolkovo. And so, as Dr. Selina says, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the program, but we're also going to go a little bit into depth on what is foresight and how do we use foresight. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to give you an opportunity, if you would like to ask a question or post a comment in the chat about the program, or about what foresight is, or how foresight can benefit you or your organization, your business. There will be an opportunity to do that as well. So as you can see from the screen, the program has been structured over a 4-day period, as Dr. Selina and the team said earlier. Very importantly, the program will not only focus at the organizational level, but it will move from the organizational level and also address the individual leadership level. We understand that future readiness is not just something that the organization needs to do. It is something that we as individuals need to develop, and that capability needs to be embedded in the organization, but also in our individual leadership. And so as we move through the program, on the first day, we will look at an introduction to future readiness. What are the methods? What are the skills? What are the mindsets? What are the key concepts of future readiness? You'll see there, we speak about anticipatory assumptions. What are some of our assumptions about the future that could be wrong and that we need to challenge in order to adjust our strategy and make ourselves more future ready? We will then look at the organizational level and how do we embed those capabilities in the organization at different levels of the team, whether it's at the level of product, at the level of strategy. How do we turn the organization into a future ready organization? On day 3, we go down into the leadership of that. How do you build future-ready teams and lead those teams? How do you build informed, high-quality forward views and lead your organization through the change that that forward-looking view requires? And then on the last day, we'll really get into what we call the true north. As Dr. Selina rightly said, some of what future readiness is about values. It's about aspirations. It's about understanding what is the kind of future that we want to create. But not only for ourselves and our organization, how do we create a future for the entire system that is a future that we would like to have? And so we're going to spend a few minutes now going into what foresight is and how we will use it in the program to give you a sense of what that's going to be like. We can go to the next slide, please. Why is this so important at this time? Well, as Dr. Selina was mentioning, the world around us is changing. It's not only changing because of artificial intelligence, it's also changing because of very fundamental changes in the context. I've listed 4 of them over there. The first one, structural and emergent geopolitical shifts. The second one there, the need to perform and transform our businesses in this environment. The need for openness to change, and then the fact that as these geopolitical or geo-relations around the world change, our mental models also need to change. We are no longer living in the world of a bipolar world or a singular hegemonic world with the Western dominance that we've become accustomed. We're now in a much more multipolar world with changing relations between great powers, changing roles of middle powers. And so as those geopolitical shifts make their way through the system, the economies of the world will change, the trade relationships will change. And the implication of that is that you may have had a business that's really good at doing business inside Russia. You may have a business that's really good at doing business in Asia, but now you need to transform your business to do really well in the Middle East or in Africa or across the globe. And so how do we facilitate that kind of learning at the individual level, at the organizational level, in terms of the strategy, in terms of the culture of the business? Well, future readiness provides us with some of the tools to do that. And foresight specifically allows us to do that. As we go to that next slide, let's talk a little bit about what the foresight tools are that we will cover in the program. So first of all, foresight can be defined as the ability to create and sustain a variety of high quality forward views. What does that mean? It means we look at the future and we understand that the future is not just a single specific future, but the future could look very different depending on how different dynamics, different drivers, different forces play out. And so foresight gives us the tools to create those different futures, but then specifically to use the insights from those futures in organizationally useful ways. So as Dr. Selina said, by using the foresight methods, we develop the insights, and the insights allow us to shift the organizational decisions. And so in the program, over those 4 days, we are going to do some research together, some analysis together, some thinking, some discussion, and those insights derived in the program will help you in your organization to move the organization in different ways. Now, you'll see on the right-hand side in that graphic, foresight typically follows a very specific pattern. It usually starts with some kind of scanning, what we refer to there as horizon scanning. And there are different ways of doing horizon scanning. Some people refer to emerging trends. Some refer to shocks and disruptions. Dr. Selina earlier referred to shifts. You might talk about system dynamics. But to draw from that analysis, that scanning, early warning around what is happening in the context around us, and then use those insights in organizationally useful ways. On the left-hand side there, foresight, and now this is a little bit technical, is a systematic, participatory, and evidence-based process to explore and anticipate for multiple plausible futures. So it's very important to say foresight is not just imagining or guessing what the future might be. There is a systematic scientific approach with tested methods used all around the world by governments, by companies, and I'll talk in a few minutes about some of the companies that use this to explore the futures. And you'll notice I'm specifically using futures in a plural sense. There are many futures, and then to shape our business decisions based on those different futures. If we go to the next slide, you might find this interesting. There's this tool here we refer to as the cone of plausibility. So at the center of that cone, you'll see there now and then time and the line in the center of the cone looking at the projected future. Most people think about the future as a single place. The future of my business, future of my career, the future of our economy, the future of the region, and they try to anticipate that single future. We would refer to that as the projected future or the forecasted future or even the predicted future. But we know that the change around us is much too complex to just think about one future or the projected future. And so what we do with foresight is we open up the cone of plausibility. And over time, we begin to understand that there are many other possible futures. We might think about the plausible future, the possible future, the probable future, the preferred future. What is the future that we would like to see? And then you even might go to the edges of the cone and think about the preposterous future. In other words, what about the future where there's an economy on the moon of satellites, of interstellar transportation, of space technology? And what about the economic opportunities in that moon economy? Now that starts to push our thinking a little bit towards that preposterous future. But in each of our businesses, whether it's in food and consumer goods, whether it's in automotive, whether it's in construction, whether it's in hospitality and hotels, there are various different futures, and foresight can help us explore those futures to be more adaptive to those futures. So what does that mean for you at the individual level? As you will see in the program, at the core of this challenge is the ability for you as an individual to be future ready. And at the core of that challenge lies what we call your mental models. So each of us, as we navigate the world around us, and our organization navigates the world around us, we use various mental models to do that. We have a mental model about geopolitics. We have a mental model about politics and law or legal aspects. We have a mental model about how the economy works. But as these changes happen, especially technological changes, our mental model becomes out of date. And so exactly as Dr. Selina was explaining, we have to go through these cycles of learning. Some of them are quick cycles within a month or a year. Others take 5 or 10 years. But what's really happening is our mental model about the world around us is being updated. And so future readiness and strategic foresight methods are ways of updating our future mental model systematically and using data as we look at the world around us. Now, I want to invite you to help me think a little bit about how this applies even today. And so you might be interested in the chat to put a comment or a question. What I'm putting on the screen, if we go to this next slide, is a model that we use to think about the world around us. You'll see there that the model, and it's not the slide about mental models. If you can go to the next slide there on the context, we'll skip over that one slide, which I've discussed already. That's the one I'm looking for. So in the slide about context, you'll notice that there's, I think you've gone one back. Let's go to slide 32, please. You'll see that there's a model there looking at the context. Now, in the context,
backwards.
I'll wait for the slides to catch up. We have to go backwards a few slides. There we go. And that's the perfect, slide 32, okay. Perfect. And so in the program, we'll do this as well. We'll work through these models, these frameworks, we'll share them with you. And of course, we'll share these with you after the webinar as well. So if you look at this model here, it talks about the external environment and it talks about the transactional environment. So when we use strategic foresight, we will analyze various factors within these two environments. And so I have a question for you. And the question I have for you is, as you look out in your business at the context around you, which of these factors do you think are the most important ones to be paying attention to in terms of being future ready? Is it the geopolitics? Is it energy prices? Is it demographics? What about the changes happening to regulators or changes happening to investment? Maybe you want to put something in the chat and my colleagues can help me identify what are the most popular ones coming up in the chat that we consider to be important, that we consider to be factors that we should be paying attention to. This is a little bit outside of our planning, but I wonder if I could ask my colleague in the studio if she wanted to share with us a view on what's coming up in the chat. I see that many of you are beginning to put some thoughts in the chat. What are some of the factors that our colleagues think are important to pay attention to?
Who has access to the chat?
А выведите нам, пожалуйста, чат.
There they are.
Да, спасибо.
Thank you.
У нас есть вопрос. Мариус, вам удобно сейчас будет ответить на вопрос, или мы сдадим в конце?
Feel free to translate the question if you like, and then I'll refer to the question as I discuss the model in a minute here.
Есть вопрос от Эдуарда. За счет чего можно ответить на вопрос о степени вероятности будущего?
This is an excellent question. And so the question there was, what about the degree of probability about some of these factors? Now, very importantly, you would remember earlier I was referring to the probable future, and you'll notice the similarity there in the probable future versus the degree of probability. Most of us have been trained to think in a very linear way about the future, almost a little bit like a mathematical model or like a clock, where time will pass and the mathematical model would play itself out, and we will measure the probability of certain eventualities in the future. However, that kind of thinking actually narrows the cone of plausibility because we start to do forecasting rather than foresight. And we start to prepare for the future that we think is the most probable future rather than being future ready. And so in this program that Dr. Selina and I will be presenting, we will explore multiple futures. So yes, probabilities are important, but what is important in addition to probabilities is the complexity of how different factors interact with each other. So in complexity theory, we talk about another concept called emergence. So in other words, instead of thinking about the, let's say, what is the probability of a certain political outcome, which is a forecast, we might say, what would happen if this economic factor combined with this technology factor, combined with this geopolitical factor, and what you would see is the emergence of a political reality that may have a low probability, but could be quite transformational. Now, when we do that kind of analysis through foresight and future readiness, what we're actually doing is we're widening the cone of plausibility. And in terms of strategy, we're starting to pay attention to the peripheral vision. We're looking at likelihoods that are less probable but high impact. And so in the program, we're going to be using some of that kind of analysis along with probability thinking. We're going to look at complexity and emergence to open up our understanding of the various futures that are possible. I'm going to ask Nikolai, our translator, to give me one more comment about what he sees in the chat, and then we'll move to the next slide here, if that's okay.
Yes.
If Julia would like to comment on that, yes.
Мариус, у нас есть еще один вопрос от участника, от Давида. И вопрос звучит так. Как форсайт меняет эмерджентное будущее? Вернее, соотносится с будущим.
This is so interesting. So one of the things we've observed through research and practice in foresight and future readiness is that the act of using foresight, in fact, changes the future. Now, why is that? Because if you look at the cone of plausibility, at the end of the cone, there are many factors that are outside of our control. But if you look at the start of the cone, there are many factors that are in our control, or we have an influence on those factors, or we have what we might call agency. We have the ability to act. And so what happens as we use foresight and as we use future readiness, we begin to become more aware of the factors and complexity that's outside of our control, but we also start to become more sensitized to what is within our control. And so what happens is our agency rises, our influence rises, our ability to make intentional decisions about the future changes. And so what can happen as we do foresight is we can shape our decision-making to begin to avoid some of the futures that are undesirable and move the system towards futures that are more desirable. Now, of course, there are limits to our power, there are limits to our agency and our influence, and this is why foresight is best done when it's done as a collective. If you imagine the entire company, the entire business getting together through a process of dialogue and engagement to do future readiness, to do foresight, or you imagine even an entire sector, the university sector, or the energy sector, or the mining sector, doing foresight together. When we do that, we start to use collective agency, and then we can actually have a profound impact on how we shape the future towards a more preferred future. So thank you, David, for that excellent question. Colleagues, we're going to go to that next slide here. I've got one more framework to mention to you, and then we're going to just give you some real quick examples of foresight being used in companies. This model that you see on the screen here is a very interesting one, which creates a tension between what we call the organizational identity at the bottom, or your leadership identity, versus your North Star, or your aspirational future? What is the future that you would like to have? What's the future that you're excited about? And in the tension between that future and your identity lies the chessboard and the mountaintop. In other words, it's the strategic terrain where you are making decisions and choices on a daily basis, a bit like a chessboard, and you're looking at the mountain that you want to climb as an organization, the growth you want to have, the expansion you want to have, the peaks you want to triumph over and climb. And so future readiness and foresight can also assist you to clarify, to understand, to unpack who are you as an organization? Who are you as an individual executive? What is that North Star, that future aspiration you want to pursue? And what is the pathway, the strategic, cultural, and other pathways that you want to take on your chessboard, on your strategic terrain, and how to navigate those mountaintops that you want to triumph? And so in the program, we'll be using this framework to help you make some of those decisions, to clarify some of those questions. And so I want to give you just very quickly, if we go to the next slide, you'll see there's a slide 35. One example of a company that's using foresight quite extensively is the company called Nestle. You would be familiar with Nestle, I'm sure. They produce consumer products sold to millions and millions of people all around the world. They've used foresight very successfully to understand how to shift their business model from a warehouse and retail-based business to more of a platform-based business. If we go to the next slide there, another example of companies doing this very well, Unilever, again, a company using consumer products all around the world. What they have done is build foresight and future readiness into the leadership and management structures of the business. Imagine coming into a Unilever management meeting or a strategy meeting and spending time looking at the future of your products, the future of your consumer, how to shift your product brand, how to prepare for the consumer of the future that has very different expectations of what your products or services might offer them. Very famous company right now, if we go to the next slide, is of course Tesla and SpaceX, led by Elon Musk. And so the way that they're using foresight is to anticipate what are the future technologies and then innovate to create those technologies. And so what happens, instead of following the market, which many companies do, is they say, well, where's the market going and how do we provide services to the market, which means that they are a market taker. What SpaceX and Tesla have done is they are inventing the market. They're anticipating the technological breakthroughs, innovating to create them, and by doing so, creating markets in space travel, in automotive, in automated robotics, and of course, more recently, in space communications. And then lastly, the company BMW lagging a little bit behind in terms of their self-driving vehicles. On the next slide there, but innovating around the consumer experience, providing what they used to describe as sheer driving pleasure, using foresight to anticipate what will the automotive user of the future want in their automobile, whether it's from heated seats to navigation systems, embedding foresight into the core of their product development as an organization. And so let me pause there and say that in the program that's upcoming, in fact, there's one more slide there, one more company that's using foresight very effectively. Shell, very famously, using foresight and future readiness all around the world where they operate. They have a foresight unit inside the head of strategy's office. And the foresight unit will do analysis on the future of a country, the future of an energy sector, shaping the company's strategy through that. And so, colleagues, let me pause there and say, when you come to the Foresight and Future Readiness program, in fact, the Future Readiness Leader program is how we've described it, we will be dealing with some of these case studies. We'll be applying these frameworks. It'll be a very interactive experience where we will work with you to apply future readiness to your organization and to your leadership journey. And so with that, let me hand back to the studio for some Q&A and discussion.
Доктор Мариус, спасибо большое за ваше выступление, за ваш рассказ. И мы переходим к вопросам и ответам, вопросам от участников, вашим ответам. И я видела интересный вопрос от Юлии. Вот если опять его вернете. Юлия спрашивает, за счет каких конкретных инструментов вы будете давать обучение? Тесты, планирование, исследование технологий работы компании или что-то другое?
For Dr.
Доктор Мариус, вам вопрос.
Thank you for the question, Julia. So we have selected a range of different tools that we will be using throughout the program. One of them is called a live case study. And so what we plan to do is to bring a real world Russian company into the program that we can work with as a live case to ensure that we have very high levels of contextual relevance to your businesses. We're also going to be working with your individual organizations, applying tools like scenario planning, environmental scanning, and then we will have some leadership tools where we will look at your individual leadership, your future readiness capabilities at the individual and management level. And so a range of different tools that we will use so that at the end of the program, you have a toolbox or a skill set that you can take back to your organization.
Can I also add something very important to us is also that we invite you to come to the program with your selected business problems. What are the struggles the challenges you're facing in your business? Could be in your operations, could be in your changing consumer taste or preferences, could be into your expansion abroad. So bring those challenges, but also the opportunities that at the moment you're looking into, because we will be working together on those in a very practical way, so that by the end of the program, together, you will have a better picture of the decisions that you wish to make, either about the challenges or about the opportunities. This is why the program is designed to work around and with your particular industry, the particular type of company that you either represent, own, or work with, and of course the environment, which could be the Russian environment, or also if you have operations, a presence, or interest in going abroad, the ones abroad. So this is very, very important, because the tools that we use are applied to your reality.
Спасибо, Селина. Мариус, я вижу в чате ответы на ваш вопрос, который вы задавали некоторое время назад. И давайте я зачитаю, что ответили наши участники. Максим указал факторы влияния. Это рыночные цены, курсы, процент ставки. Внутренние факторы — это стратегия, цели, миссия, организационная структура, культура производства. Внешние факторы — это рыночные условия, регуляторы, ну и конкуренты, конечно же. Ольга указывает следующие факторы влияния. Это санкции, ограничения свободной торговли, влияющие на развитие нефтедобывающих отраслей, ограничения развития технологий и машиностроения в целом. Вот такие ответы предоставили наши участники. Так, я вижу вопрос от Владимира. Какие шаги должен предпринять руководитель сегодня, чтобы подготовить себя и свою организацию к вызовам на ближайшие 10 лет, к примеру?
Yes, Vladimir, great question, and I'm sure one that keeps all of you and us awake in the night, because this is exactly why we work in this field and why this program is so important. We could look at the next 10 years and imagine we have a crystal ball and make some bets about what could and could not happen. I think the past few years around the world have shown how intense last-minute massive changes can be either imposed on us or opportunities also opening up, because especially in Russia, the situation that all of you are facing, not only with sanctions but also with other types of forces in the market, has also made all of you extremely agile in response, because of course there is an economy and a life and a business prosperity that continues despite the regulatory environment around us changing. So in the program, we look at what is the type of future that our business and ourselves want to have, and then we look at imagining where the macro forces are going to shift and what type of impact they will have. We don't promise to anyone to be able to have the crystal ball of the next 10 years, because I think those who have tried this have miserably failed. But we do know that there are certain macro trends that are impacting businesses and countries today, and that the uncertainty and the volatility of the environment will remain, even when sanctions are lifted or there are less taxation being imposed on countries, etc., other things will pop up. So our ability to navigate and to embrace future readiness and using tools like foresight is like training a muscle in the human body or in the human mind. Once that is trained and activated, then we can really deal with anything and make the right decisions given the context around us. And this is what the program is about. It isn't about together predicting the next 10 years and betting. It is more about using scientific methods, analyzing what is it that we would like the future to be for us and for our people, navigating the constraints that we know today, navigating something that Dr. Marius is an expert on in many areas, but also the changing nature of competition. Because competition, if I am in automotive, is no longer only automotive players. Competition, if I am a bank, is not only banking players. We have technology giants becoming banks and the other way around. And also this, we need help in understanding the changing nature of competition because it profoundly changes the rules of the game. And this is also what the program is built around and in a very unique way.
Спасибо большое, Селин. У меня есть к вам вопрос. В вашей презентации вы озвучили 3 важных фактора влияния. Вы их назвали 3 силы. Это долголетие, это развитие технологий и поиск смыслов. Вот как вы считаете, какой из них на сегодняшний день больше всех недооценивается и почему?
A very important question, Julia, because we hear a lot about technology. We hear a little bit about longevity, not too much, but we don't hear much about purpose, although purpose is very, very important. We have become accustomed, I think because also the media portrays Generation Z as the generation that wants money, meaning, and well-being. These are in English the 3 things: money, meaning, purpose, and well-being. And so through media reports, we have become accustomed to think that purpose is only something young people care about. And it isn't. At the moment, employers globally are not only struggling with AI, they're also struggling to turn around their cultures and their places of work so that they can answer the search for meaning of people. And the more we work with technology, the more we might think that our value as humans, where is the value of humans at the end of the day if AI can do everything? And I was asked last Friday at the Open Forum, if you take education, if AI can be a tutor, a personalized tutor in a classroom, do we need teachers any longer? And so it's very important that we understand purpose because any technological development must be in the service of human thriving. Otherwise, what is the point of all of these investments in technology? And therefore, one of the forces that is least studied and least considered as a force that changes the system of work is purpose. I have already problems in today's business in retaining people because they can switch employment very quickly if they don't feel there is a purpose alignment. And purpose is not just a philosophical question. For a business, the purpose is the ultimate destination where I'm going, and it changes over time. Nestle's purpose at the beginning was not the purpose they have today. If you think of Sbear's purpose back in the days, it's very different from what the group has today. So I think, Julia, the quest for purpose is one we underestimate.
Спасибо, Селина. Мариус, доктор Мариус, у меня есть к вам вопрос. Как вы считаете, почему именно форсайт является столь необходимой компетенцией для лидеров сегодня?
Well, thank you for the question. I think that linking it to the question you asked Dr. Selina a minute ago, Humans and communities and companies are essentially at our core narrative beings. And so we are connected to our traditions, our stories. And what happens is we build the world around us to embody and to symbolize the things that we hold dear. And so when times are stable and the world around us is not changing very quickly, well, then everything makes sense. Our strategy works, our organization is functional. But when we enter a period of time where, whether it's technology or it's political change or it's economic shifts, where the world around us is changing very rapidly, what starts to happen is some of our old stories, our old ideas about how the world is or how the world should be, some of those stories begin to break down. And so the skill set that we had or the mindset that we had, which caused us to be functional and successful in a time of little bit of change, doesn't serve us very well in a time of rapid change. And so what we see around the world right now is because of the rapid change in the economy and technology and politics and geopolitics and trade, companies are looking for new tools. And of course, foresight, the future readiness toolbox and mindset, even as an organizational competence, is the missing ingredient in helping us tell a new story or create a new way of operating in the world. And I think that's at the heart of it.
Спасибо большое, доктор Мариус. И поскольку время потихоньку подходит к концу, у меня финальный вопрос, доктор Селина, доктор Мариус, к вам. Как тема готовности к будущему пришла в вашу жизнь? Было ли какое-либо событие из вашей профессиональной жизни или личной жизни, которое вас заставило задуматься о вызовах будущего?
Shall I go first? So, I actually there is a special story in the book about this, so I will not tell that story. But overall, it has been a development over time. It hasn't been one bulb moment. One day I wake up, oh yes, this is a new field. I've been in the business in industry for most of my life, and particularly interested in human development. So, and I come from corporate selling. Corporate sales has been, one of the big functions of my life, and then I switched to supply chain because I needed to see the other side of things until I eventually, settled for executive management and also board services. So over time, I started to see signals, gaps in the market, gaps in the way we look at human development. And so over time, a picture emerged, not only in my own head, but also thanks to research that I and other people are doing, of what identifies, what distinguishes people who thrive in the new world of work. And this is across industries, across countries, and it is this concept of future readiness, which we are working towards making as popular and as useful as disruptive innovation, agility, psychological safety. So we do believe that future readiness will become a mainstream part of managing and leading businesses. And the ultimate goal for us is not only to help prosperity in terms of business prosperity and people to thrive in their professional journey, but also that we set off positive trajectories for society. And that is an even higher level type of goal, given the type of world we live in. So that has been my entry into future readiness. Let's see how Dr. Marius.
Thank you, Dr. Selina. So in fact, I think Dr. Selina and I had a similar journey. I was very interested in leadership and building leadership capabilities. I was working in the area of strategy, but also doing research and interested in ethics, public ethics, and how leaders can develop strategy that is ethical, that is aware of the impact of the decisions that they're making. And as I was doing research and working in this environment or these kinds of spaces, I came across this field called foresight or strategic foresight. The French refer to it as la prospective. It's referred to as anticipatory governance by some, but it's a very broad field under the umbrella of future readiness that helps individuals and organizations think about the future in a structured way. And I ended up doing a master's degree in the US in strategic foresight, and discovered that in fact there's an entire community of hundreds of professionals and experts who use these tools and have built over many decades these capabilities. And so that's been my journey into the field.
Спасибо большое, Мариус. Спасибо большое, Селина. Мы завершаем наше сегодняшнее мероприятие. Благодарим вас, дорогие участники, за то, что вы были с нами эти 1,5 часа, за то, что писали ваши комментарии и задавали ваши вопросы. И ждем вас на программе «Готовность лидеров к будущему», которая стартует 23 апреля, уже совсем скоро. Спасибо и до встречи!